Welcome to Logistics Unplugged. My name is Brian Blalock, and I'm your host, and I'm happy to jump in today to all things logistics. So let's pull back the curtain, take a look under the hood, and have a great discussion. Joining us today, our founder and CEO, Bobby Harris. Bobby, thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we also have joining us today our COO and President of Managed Logistics, Adam Blankenship. Adam, thanks for being here.
No problem. Glad to be here.
And then last but not least, Azad Ratzki, our Chief Technology Officer. Azad, thank you for being here with us today.
Pleasure to be here.
So I thought before we got into the details and the topics today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the origin story of each of you individually, how you got into logistics. Adam, talk to us a little bit about how you got into the logistics industry and how you got to BlueGrace.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Logistics wasn't something that I started looking for, I guess, kind of after my graduate program in college. I went to work for Yellow Transportation, and about 10 years later, I was still in logistics, unintentionally, I guess. So 25 years later, I'm still in logistics. So I think that's probably a pretty common story for a lot of us. But no, I enjoyed the challenges of finding ways to serve customers and create interesting ways to go to market and compete. And I think logistics has been an interesting journey and allowed me to kind of, chase a lot of different sort of diversity in what I get to do each day and work with some great people.
Love that. And Azad, I know your journey is a little bit different, so I want to ask you how you wound up in logistics, because I know that was here. But talk to me about how you got started in technology, where that journey started, and about how you got here to BlueGrace.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'll try and condense it down. Been in technology for about 25 years now. I started extremely young. And through a variety of different experiences, working for a variety of different companies, was fortunate enough to found my own, be a co-founder of another, and specifically in technology and AI. Interestingly enough, I did have some clientele at one point running a consultancy that did do logistics. But as far as my journey into truly logistics really did start at BlueGrace, and that was my large exposure to logistics was.
Well, we're happy that wound up being where you landed, Azad. Yeah. So, and then Bobby, I'm going to have you bring up the finish to this, because I'd love for you to talk to us not only about your journey in logistics and the origin of how you got here, but how did you and when did you decide that you could take on something of this scope and this magnitude?
Yeah, so I came out of high school just looking for a good job while I went to college, and a freight company called Southeastern Freight Lines was hiring dock workers for what I thought was an incredible amount. I realized why they paid you so much after I joined, but that's really where this all started. And from there, when you connect with a good company, you grow with that company. And they had various things, and they taught me new ways of doing things, and got some different positions, and got into what they call weight and inspection. We kind of audit and start learning classes and densities and pricing and things like that. And then I ran the outbound facility. I was only 20 years old. And then they gave me the opportunity of a lifetime, which was to get into sales at a very, very young age for them. And I learned from some of the best people. And it also started, the journey of this is what customers need. That's what they're looking for. And just along the way, it's kind of cool to see just how important everything is, in the movement of goods and everything else that supports that. So as I moved on in my career, I decided to be a little entrepreneurial, and I joined or purchased some franchises that were centered around a DHL reseller. But I thought that would be kind of cool because that wasn't what I did. I was, an LTL guy. But I thought to complement that and put the two together would be really cool. So most of my business remained LTL. For several years. At the end of that time, I had 23 franchises, was operating a pretty cool little business, but it was still centered around DHL. And they left in the United States in 2008. Mm-hmm. They said, hey, we're not making money in the United States. We're out of this place. We had a 15-year agreement with them at the time, but this is the old DHL. And they're still a great international company, but when they did that, it was 2008. Towards the end of 2008, I was actually in a deal to purchase the entire system. So I went from a very, hey, this is going to be fun spot to not a real fun spot. And, freight volumes were at the lowest we'd seen in years and years and years. Real interesting time. But the one thing that we did know is there were a lot of customers that we didn't know yet that needed to move their LTL business, and LTL carriers were great partners with us. So we started BlueGrace, which is just the middle name of my two daughters, Haley Blue, Mercedes Grace. And it was just meant to be more of a technology holding company. And then I would figure out the name, but the toothpaste got out of the tube real quick, and we started running, providing LTL solutions and shipping for small to medium-sized customers. It was more of a door-to-door sales type setup, and we franchised it because we had the technology, we had the carrier relationships and the rates, and we also had the ability to bring in people that knew enough about the freight industry to support others. That's where BlueGrace kind of got its way.
I love that, and I'm so glad you went down the story of the name too, Bobby. Because as a proud girl dad, I love that story, and I love that that's where your thoughts went when you were deciding what to frame this as, what to put on the name. I want to talk a little bit about, and I'm not asking you to pull out the crystal ball and tell me everything, but we are in February now, so we do know that we've had a little bit of a time to look at how the industry's changed in 2025. And I want to get an idea of what you think the trends are going to be for the industry. And I think I'm going to start on the technology side of that a little bit, Azad, and let you kind of tell us your thoughts on where you think technology in our industry is going for transportation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's two distinct facets. An example that I've used in other conversations around this too is I kind of, when I came to the logistics space, and especially even now, I think it's that much more relevant, you see a lot of similarities between the changes that went through the fintech industry and the evolution of that. Two specific things that I see happening more and more and will only happen more in 2012 center around standardization. So basically allowing systems to communicate with each other. That is still, I think, a fundamental problem across many different industries, not just logistics, but it does stand as one of the obstacles that prevents you from automating everything that you want to. And that kind of feeds into AI and automation and the different things that you can do with that. But in order to do that, you typically have to have a lot of these systems talking with each other, right?
Sure.
That could be a carrier to a 3PL, that could be a customer to a 3PL, a customer to a carrier, et cetera. And you see different movements happening in our industry around that. We're part of that movement as well. I think in addition to that, when it comes to AI, large language models, we've all heard it now. We know ChatGPT, all of these different services. You're going to see a lot more of different organizations trying to really leverage that when dealing with customer communications, setting expectations, and being able to provide more proactive feedback to customers in order to provide them ultimately better, more efficient service.
So not much to do then, right?
Yeah, of course.
Piece of cake. Well, I'm excited about where technology is going to take us, and we will get into more of that later. And I want to switch over to you, Adam. And I know that you have to stay in front of things because not only do you have the responsibilities in other areas of the company, but in managed logistics specifically, you have to keep your eye on what's going on in the market and what changes are happening and how we can better support our customers and for our audience out there, no matter who you're working with, whether you're working with another provider, whether you're working directly with the carriers, you got to be flexible with what's going on in the market. So talk to us about what you see in trends in the market right now.
Yeah, Brian, sure. I think over the last few years, I think we've continued to see a movement towards the growing importance of data. And I think some of the technology that Azad spoke about actually really aligns well with that. And I think customers are really just coming into the early stages of really understanding what does that mean in terms of how to be more predictive in terms of how they can build the most cost-effective, most efficient shipping models to ultimately get their freight to where it needs to be at the right time and with the right consistency and hopefully at the best price. And I think what we've seen within managed logistics is most of our customers really are challenged by that. They're very challenged by their own data in many ways, and then trying to re-engineer existing processes with some of that limited data. And then you do that with the backdrop of an uncertain economy that we've certainly been challenged with over the last several years, going from incredibly hot in a post-COVID environment to where we're at today, which is most certainly not as hot as what it was then. And then a rising rate backdrop that we've seen in LTL contrasted with a very soft rate environment in truckload. And I think it just creates a lot of confusion for customers. But at the end of the day, I think what our customers value from us is the ability to help them make sense of data, help them make sense of emergent technologies that are out there, and ultimately build the best solution that's not just necessarily the best price solution, but the best solution that's going to work for their needs. And I think that's where data and technology really come together in our world.
Love that. And Bobby, from more of a whole industry standpoint, whole company standpoint, talk to us a little bit about the trends that you see.
I mean, it's just amazing. In technology, they always talk about Moore's law, where everything doubles in 2 years, and I feel like that's kind of the pace logistics is on. It doubles, it doubles in complexity. It just changes it so much more. And I think probably the most obvious one is going back to what Adam's saying. What used to be kind of cool to show people what's going on is now table stakes in business intelligence and giving them the data that they need. Our industry is benefiting quite a bit because as a 3PL, we're finding that the market itself over the last 20 years, more and more market share has been grabbed by third-party true transportation management. I think that's accelerating more now than ever as people are allowing somebody else to come in and take a look under the covers and control what they're doing or at least give them options and be a big assist because now they're much more informed as to what we're doing with that data. And our industry as a whole is just getting far more interesting in the sense of there's a lot of consolidation happening. You're going to see more of that this year. You're seeing a tremendous amount of AI. Logistics hasn't always led the tech world. There's other things, but there's always been something interesting. Right now, I think they are. I think the logistics is accelerating quicker than the rest of other industries. The amount of AI development in a lot of places that are still waiting for it to show, it's showing here. It's in a big way. So I think that's going to be something else. You're going to see the early adopters, the people that are efficient at taking that in and utilizing that for their customer success are going to be the winners. And I also think it's going to be very tough for the smaller companies right now that do some of the same things. It's not a good place to be in this market. It's been a soft market for 2 years. Some people are getting a little worn down. And I don't think that's coming anytime soon where you're going to see the cavalry come and save us. A lot of people are speculating, when's it going to change? When's it going to change? Back half of this year is most likely the best scenario. And we just don't know how much of a splash that's going to make. So it'll be an interesting year to say the least.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Bobby, that you said that. I can remember I was in a different industry before, and I watched the same things with technology and construction that used to trail technology, catching up and leading that for a while. And I've been so excited for the last, 10 years since I've been here to watch what this invention of yours has done and how technology's kind of led that. And I get that same feeling now of being on the front of that, and it's exciting. So I'm loving that. And that leads me back to you, Azad. Mm-hmm. And we talk about the changes here at BlueGrace, and we're talking about the changes to the industry. This is obviously for all, not just for our customers, but we're happy to have you here too. But Azad, when we talk about technology, I know we've done some things recently, and some of it have led to acquisitions, and I want to talk a little bit about one of those with you, and then I'm going to switch back with Bobby and Adam and talk about the next. But talk to us about Evos and what that is and how that made its way in the door here and what our excitement level is there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think if you'll indulge me, one of the things that I'll kind of throw in here is that it's really important to understand that, especially in an organization like ours, where you're servicing hundreds of clients, all with different needs, there's kind of a trifecta, maybe even more than a trifecta, but effectively you need to have a variety of different tools in order to perform all these functions.
Sure.
Some of them center around what used to be traditionally paper and pencil processes. That would be your TMS, effectively, right? You need to be able to capture data. You need to be able to take in the fact that someone wants to either make a shipment, a load needs to be procured, et cetera, et cetera. And then you need to be able to execute on it. That's fundamental. You need to also be able to report on it. That's another aspect. You also need to be able to manage your relationships with your partners, your carriers, your vendors, et cetera. But another really critical piece, and one of the pieces that we think generates enormous value for our clients and just creates a lot of opportunity for efficiency from a variety of different perspectives is optimization, specifically load optimization. And when we made a decision to acquire Evos, it was a decision centered around being able to capture a piece of the future of this industry, right? I think Bobby was even alluding to the notion that there's the needs of those within our industry and our clients evolves over time, becomes more involved, more complex as the world demands more from them. And in order to be able to accomplish that, you have to really move away from what effectively was spreadsheets, papers, and pencils, especially when trying to plan out how you're going to deliver all those goods. That's where load optimization comes in. And without going too deep, and to try and keep this a little succinct, Evos was a company that had a product called Plan Tools, which allowed you to take, as an example, 20,000 loads, 20,000 shipments, and maybe condense those down into 2,000 because you were able to determine that based on a specific route, based on certain variables, you could organize those into a more effective route, reduce the number of trips, reduce the number of trucks, et cetera. You can imagine, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand how that could change the value proposition for both our clients, for us, for everyone involved, a big win-win. And it centers around very sophisticated technology and algorithms, artificial intelligence, et cetera.
I love that, and I like how you looked at me when you said not a rocket scientist. I won't take that personally. So that's super exciting, and I can't tell you, as somebody who looks at all the great engineering and things that I've seen for customers in the past, where we look at the possibility of consolidation, we look at all these things, and now we actually don't just tell you what you could have done, we can actually execute on that, and that's important. And we haven't just had that particular growth lately. Bobby and Adam, tell us about the new member of the family that we brought in recently in Freight Center and how we got to that point. And Adam, I'll start with you, and Bobby, I want you to finish that up because I know that you have a ton of detail on that.
Well, I think much like what what Azad was talking about with Evos, I think anytime we look at possible acquisitions, we're looking at how can we make BlueGrace stronger. And so you look at where do we have capabilities that we can either develop something new, where can we enhance stuff that we already do, or make things more effective. And so certainly that was the case with Evos, was kind of reimagining some tools that we were already leveraging in some really cool ways. Freight Center was a little bit different. Freight Center, it gets back to some of our more traditional core LTL routes. However, it was in a market that we just really didn't directly cover on a daily basis with our core business to the level that we've evolved. As we've continued to go up market and multimodal to a more sophisticated customer group over the years, there's been some just wonderful places in the traditional LTL market that, frankly, we've ignored a bit. And I think looking at an opportunity to acquire somebody like Freight Center really allowed us to, almost in a single move, sort of completely plug a hole that had been missing for quite some time for us. And so I think anytime you look at acquisitions, you always look at, overlap, and there's conversations like, hey, how much of this do you already do, and what is it going to cannibalize? And I think the wonderful thing about this is we've got a great company with a really strong culture, a bunch of really good people, with almost no technical or people or client overlap, which is something that is really unusual for acquisition. So to me, it's sort of it was a missing tooth in our smile, if you will, and just allowed us to keep doing, the really good things that we are, and for a completely different size customer than maybe what we were fixated on. And then not to mention, we think some of the things that makes them so good on a digital front in terms of how do they reach their target audience, we think that there's tremendous application into some of the other target customer segments that we chase on a daily basis with our core BlueGrace business. So I think it's just a really nice win on a number of fronts.
Love that. And Bobby, talk to us about where the idea came to make that move and the benefit that you see even to our customers in this acquisition.
Well, kind of at the heart of BlueGrace, we grew up on LTL and then became very advanced in truckload and combined them and started creating, what we now have as managed logistics. But again, the origin of our story is we really nailed down LTL. So Freight Center's been around longer than we have, and they've always been exceptional at it. And there's only so many companies. If you look around, there's very few companies that are special when it comes to LTL. Like everybody features it, but very few are very good at it. They're very good at it. And so when you meet somebody and you know the company and you have a long-standing respect for them, and the founder, Matt Brogius, we go way back. I've known him for a long time, and we've always had a mutual respect for each other and enjoyed our conversations and times over the years. So when it came time for us to expand a little bit, it was kind of exciting to think, hey, you guys do some stuff that'd be really cool to help supercharge BlueGrace and vice versa, and would be great to put somebody like that on the team and put that team on the team. And so then you go and you visit and you get around the people there and the culture there, and you go, you know what, this feels like a really cool union. And it didn't happen overnight. We waited a while, and last year was a very tough year for a lot of companies, a lot of logistics companies, but they knew how to grow in it, and that was really impressive. So that just made me that much more excited about trying to find a way to do something. And ultimately, we got together and sat down and said, let's do it.
And I can't tell you, Bobby, I think I had a little bit of a history there too, in that I was in construction technology for 20 years before I came here, but I took about a year and a half break in that, and I actually worked at Freight Center. And when I came to BlueGrace, I came here accidentally because I Googled Freight Center and saw BlueGrace 1.5 miles away from my house. So the happiest accident ever. I found family that I planned to be here for about 2 years, and 10 years later I'm still here because it's impossible to leave. And so I thank everyone for that opportunity that's here at this table with me.
Thank you.
And Azad, I know that we talked a little bit about technology with Evos and some of the things that you've done, but I'd really love to talk about the technology changes since you've been here at BlueGrace and some of the things that we developed. But let's not just make it BlueGrace. Let's talk about our industry and technology changes and continue to go down that road.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think, with the fact that we're blessed to have such a, what I would consider to be a large engineering team for an industry and an organization like ours, I think we've been able to accomplish some pretty amazing things. A lot of it has been centered around self-sufficiency. This is another aspect. Coming in as someone that was, effectively an import into the industry, it's something that I saw as an absolute game changer for us. And also, as always, I'm always thinking about what is a benefit to our customers collectively. Being able to be masters of our own destiny when it came to technology was really important to me. And some of the changes that we made around that were for instance, the creation of our rating engine, BG Rating, which underlies all of our systems, provides basically the ability for us to rate on any shipment. It's called thousands of times per minute by many, many different vendors, partners, customers, et cetera. And it kind of underpins everything. The other thing was, taking our Blue Ship TMS to the next level. Like, many of those in our industry, there have been some major TMS players that have existed prior that had kind of cemented their hold across, and they make good products. They serve their purpose, et cetera. But I felt, with the amazing company that we had, and I'll just interject here for a second too and say that you mentioned Google earlier. I oftentimes think of us as the Google of logistics companies when it comes to a procurement standpoint and a technology standpoint. It felt to me that we needed to make sure that our platform was one that could stand completely on its own without any dependency of anybody else, because we want to be able to, we want to iterate rapidly. We want to incorporate that new cutting edge technology across our entire product suite. So that was one thing that we did. We basically, had different things that we were using in order to facilitate different aspects of our Blue Ship platform. We ended up developing those ourselves. That was one of the, probably one of the biggest moves that we did. And then the final stage in that happened roughly about a year and a half ago. Once again, like many other organizations like ours, when it came to tendering shipments, right, and that final piece of execution, it's often the hardest because for every single tender that goes out, you basically have to ensure that you can communicate with that, with the actual carrier on the other end and get that information to them and have the pickup happen, all these different things. And so typically companies would outsource that in some way, shape, or form, right? Or they use some sort of intermediary platform. And then we decided, strategically on our side that we could do it faster, we could do it better, more reliably, and we could build the technology ourselves, and we did. And that really completed our completely self-sufficient Blue Ship TMS platform, entirely cloud-based. It's the thing I think we're all extremely proud of. I'm extremely proud of my team and everything they put into it. But we can scale to any level, we can meet any demand, we can tender to anybody, and then to top it off, the cherry is that we can optimize and consolidate all the loads that go into it.
I love it. End to end, being able to create technology to drive better decisions in transportation is everything to our partners that are out there. So the things that you're developing, so happy to see it. I was happy to see you when you got here, and have been super excited to watch everything that you've done. And Adam, I want to talk about the impact to our actual shippers, and particularly managed logistics. They're facing a different world that's a rapidly changing demands on shippers. Talk to us about what some of those changing demands are and how we can be responsive to that to help kind of manage that chaos.
Yeah, I mean, I hit on it a little bit earlier, but I think at the end of the day, managed logistics and that story has always been about evolution. And what we were able to do to create value for our customers 10 years ago is very different than what we do today. And I think that's part of the journey. And I think as we leverage technology, it's been part of the feature set that's allowed us to kind of lead the way there. But first and foremost, just understand our customers don't want to be logisticians most of the times. They have real jobs every day. They are held accountable to buying effectively, getting their product to where it needs to be or in stores. And most of the time, they really look to us to sort of take away a lot of the uncertainty, workload, and risk from those transactions and those business relationships. So I think for managed logistics, our goal has been to create, let's call it, a way to embrace as much of that as possible. At times, we do that from connectivity of data, and the tendering process, the data exchange, web services. At times, we do that through data manipulation and cleanup to help customers and BlueGrace understand what's actually going on. At times, we do that through analytics and optimization to help build the right plan. And there's other situations where, quite frankly, it's as simple as we have an expertise that we don't think exists anywhere else out there in the market of the basic blocking and tackling understanding of how to run a freight network incredibly well for a customer. And I think the sweet spot of what we've done a really good job of is all those different things in some degree or another exist in every client relationship. And I think what we've always done a very good job of is understanding how to sort of suss out the right formula and mixture of each of those things for a customer to make it feel very tailored to what the customer ultimately needs in an evolving landscape. And again, the landscape constantly evolves and changes, and what was important 5 years ago is very different today. But I think we're well equipped because we never really viewed it as a product or a service as much as it is a ongoing conversation and adaptable solution to sort of deal with customer challenges and problems.
And Adam, that's great. And Bobby, we talked about the origins of BlueGrace. We talked about the entry of everyone here at this table into this industry. But talk to me about how managed logistics kind of came about. What made you decide that was a place to go with this business?
Well, I'm gonna answer that in two parts. Number one, it's just a natural fit. No different than if you were to try and navigate the legal world and do a very complex form of litigation and decide not to use a lawyer. Except it's even more so because we come with the resources that we gain from having such scale, and we're able to share that with those that don't have a Fortune 100 footprint and let them be like the Fortune 100 and have the same resources. But the mindset is there's not been a business yet that I went into or looked at and thought we can't make this business better. And if you just go in with that premise, and sometimes it's not even direct logistics, it's something else that we do in our business that we might be able to help them with. And many times it is. It's most of the time, the vast majority is going to be, hey, there's something in your supply chain that we can really help you with. And if it's someone that's very advanced and knows what they do, then it's even better because then they know how to utilize the assistance they get. And in doing that, it's not usually something that's just a one-look type thing. So more and more customers are saying, hey, everything depends on the other part. It's three-dimensional, and we need to know that you can look at it all, and that's what managed logistics does. But the origins of that, the cool thing about BlueGrace for me is having met people along the way, and when they talk about the success, it's not just me throwing words out there. I've really met just the most amazing people to help you develop stuff, and that's without someone like Adam here, who really was the architect of it in the beginning, and the engine of it, I would say, was Jason Lockard, who would go out and sell it before we really had it and just kind of figure it out. But our first account came by accident. It was a very, very large company, and they said, "Hey, do you guys do this?" And we're like, "Of course we do," and we kind of did, but we just said, "Hey, now we got to put this all together. We got to be really good," and we nailed it. And after that, we said, we put together enough of this infrastructure over time, and we have so many professionals. We should be rock stars at this, and we enjoy doing it. It's a tremendous type of business. It's great. The businesses that we work with, the carriers are awesome to work with it, and the people here at BlueGrace have built it, not me. I've supported them in doing really cool stuff, but I'm the beneficiary of being part of a team that is kind of led the way.
And Bobby, that goes to the core values of this company that are part of the reason that I'm here, and that humble part that you put out there is a big part of it. And what's interesting to me is you talked about how that first opportunity, that first customer came about, and it kind of goes to the word Adam used a minute ago when we were talking about scale. And I think that's something that I've seen here better than I've seen in other places is a lot of people get attention when they have $25 million worth of freight, right? But shippers that have $100,000 worth of freight or $200,000 worth of freight don't seem to get that same attention. And I think that, Adam, is one of the things that I've seen so strongly that we've been able to do here is scale to their needs. So I want to take it out of just us scaling to their needs, and I want to talk about how shippers out there need to be able to scale their operations as they hopefully are not the same size. Bobby, you talked about industries every 2 years and those changes in our industry change. Well, hopefully businesses are not the same a year from now, and it's for the positive as they are today. So as they grow, as they constrict, whatever that is, how do they scale? Adam, talk to me about that.
Well, I think it starts with understanding your core business. And oftentimes I think about how we scale our business, and it comes with a sincere desire to really solve problems. And I think if you do that, I think you start in the right place. And I think about how we serve other customers. We're constantly willing to tear down what we do to make what we do better going forward. And I think businesses sometimes have a reluctance to do that. But I think as companies, look in the world that we're moving into right now with technology and some of the stuff that Azad had alluded to, is you have to be willing to embrace some of this technology that looks pretty scary. So if you're talking about scaling your logistics function as a shipper, well, you better be thinking about, do you really understand your logistics function? Do you have the right partner? Do you have the right technology in place? Do you have access to the carrier network to not only do what you do today, but to give you the capabilities to adapt that radically in a very short period of time? Because I think if we've learned anything over the last few years, it's that what we believe the right path is today very possibly could take a radical change and turn 6 months from now, and then could change again 12 months after that. And we've certainly seen that. And I think the folks that seem as though they've been able to sort of navigate those waters the best, quite frankly, are the ones that have the most adaptable processes. And I think that's one thing that I've always enjoyed about BlueGrace is that we don't wake up every day feeling like it has to work the same way that it did 6 months ago or 18 months ago. I think we wake up every day thinking like, oh, this was cool, it worked yesterday. Let's go find a whole new way to do it. That's even if it's brand new. And I think sometimes that creates a little chaos in our network. But I think by and large, that's a feature, not a bug in the process, and it really gets into the fabric of the DNA of our culture and our people here, and helps us kind of solve problems.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that we get to become that scale for some of our partners so that they don't have to grow a logistics team. They don't have to take all the hits. You talk about it causing some disruption here. Well, we're managing that disruption for them. We're removing that complexity for them. And Azad, I'd like to talk a little bit about how technology kind of fits into that piece, how shippers can scale better when they're leveraging certain technology from the small to the large. I mean, there's different pieces of what we do that don't apply to everyone, right? So talk about the way that you can scale using different types of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that to preface the whole thing is I think this is like many situations in growing any kind of business is you ultimately want to focus on what your value proposition is, right? So typically a shipper, right, they could be producing products and they need to ship them out. I mean, there's a variety of different reasons a shipper is going to be a shipper and shipping things. But by using a service like ours, effectively with the whole technology suite, we're built around serving and being able to handle an enormous amount of capacity, right? It is pretty much, I mean, underlying our organization is effectively our ability to be able to process as many shipments as possible effectively, efficiently, with all the data required, all the different nuances of that, the reporting that comes from that, the auditing capabilities, all these different things. That is our priority, right? I mean, our services, ultimately, we're like a turnpike for these things, but we have to build a platform that can, service every different type of shipper and all of their needs. And if you are the shipper, you might be a Fortune 50 company and you can afford to have some of the systems and build out that an organization like ours does. But even for Fortune 50 companies, sometimes that might not be a priority because that's not what their specialty is, right? So you just like in many other business cases, right, it can sometimes be substantially to your benefit to focus on your strong points, your strong suit, and find a vendor or a partner that can handle with perfection the other aspects that you might not necessarily be good at. Obviously, we've talked about managed logistics. This is one of those aspects, right? It's a very powerful value proposition for an organization that this is not their forte. They need it. It's a necessity, but they're not going to be as skilled at it. And going back to the technology aspect and kind of wrap that up, I would just say that, as I mentioned, scalability is paramount, right? Our ability to rate many shipments at the same time, our ability for our TMS system to be able to handle all that data, our ability to connect to over 200 different partners from an integration and data perspective, that's what we do.
Yeah, I love that. And everyone doesn't need every piece, but you have to have all the pieces to accommodate wherever they fall in that spectrum.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
Love that, Azad. And we are at that point now where earlier I promised that I wasn't going to make you look in the crystal ball. Now I'm going to ask you to do exactly that. We're going to talk about changes that we see in the industry in 2025. And we know, things change, and our ability to change with it is one of the things I love about this company. But I want to go around the horn, and I want to, Azad, you're still kind of in stride there, so I'm going to start with you with the changes to 2025, and Bobby, we're going to finish up with you so we can kind of get a look at what we think is going to happen and measure it as best we can.
So to jump into that, I think one of the biggest changes you'll see, and it really is just a continuation of what we saw in 24 and really kind of pick up mid-23, I think you're just going to see an exponential investment in logistics technology. It's an industry, you see it every time technology and whether it be venture funds, everybody gets into a new industry and they see it's ripe for improvement in some way, shape, or form. You see a massive influx of innovation. And, even using myself as an example and being kind of naive to the opportunities of in logistics to apply technology, I have seen enormous growth in that area. I think 2025 is only going to exacerbate that. I think you're going to see massive influx. You're going to see more, and just to be honest, right, TMS providers with their own flavors of different things. You're going to see more integrators. You're going to see, companies like P44 increase in their scope of services, different things like that, and what they offer, how they integrate, going back to that standardization aspect. And then on top of it, the other thing that has, I think, even turbocharged that is, what we touched on earlier in the conversation is the advent of large language models, the AI that everybody knows and loves now, right? That everybody has become effectively addicted to. That has real business value, and so when you tie it into the logistics space, and you can, whether it be through predictive analytics, whether it be through the use of computer vision and having large language models interpret documents, and having your TMS assist an end user in being able to do something using a combination of all those different technologies, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see, kind of a confluence of these things, and just that much more investment in technology.
Thank you, Zod. And Adam, what do you see on the horizon and changes in the industry in 2025?
Yeah, I think 2025 is going to be a little bit of a transition year, where I think we're going to start seeing what maybe normal looks like. I feel like for a while we've been using this moniker of, hey, we're in a post-COVID environment, and I don't think any of us really know what that means. And I think 2025 may give us the best chance to start understanding that in a an up-moving, slightly pivoted towards growth economy, I think is what we'll likely see this year, at least at some point. And I think a more, let's call it moderate freight volume environment, I think is something we're going to see this year. So I think that's going to really allow all of us to maybe get back to normal if that's such a thing. On the flip side of that, I'm going to put one sort of crystal ball notion on the not so positive side out there too, is all of us are going to learn more in 2025 than we ever thought we'd ever desire to on things like cybersecurity. And that's something that we, and Azad touched a little bit on that, but just data security and the ability to prevent fraud in our day-to-day actions is going to be something that we, unfortunately, based on what we do and where we live, is just something we're going to have to get way more accustomed to in each and everything that we do.
I agree with that, and I promise not to click on anything that's phishing from this point forward, Adam. Bobby, I'm going to have you bring this point home and just share with us what you think is on the horizon for 2025.
Well, I think Adam and Azad hit the big points on that, and I alluded to some of it earlier too. Consolidation is the market's right for it. It's there's a lot of data out there that suggests that, and there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that that's exactly what's going to happen. So there's a ton of rationale in consolidation. For one, that you'll see, it happened a couple of years ago where logistics took kind of the forefront. My kid's kind of like, "Hey, Daddy, what do you do?" Is more like, "Hey, Dad, that stuff you do is on the news." Yeah. And the world kind of figured it out a little bit more what it is. And I think you're going to see more and more of that. So it's kind of the world's getting a little bit more interested in what logistics means and how things go. Right now, the political climate, every 10 hours there's a new tariff. It's on, it's off, it's this, it's that. That impacts businesses. Legislation impacts businesses and trade in the United States, good, bad, and indifferent. There's a lot of things that are going on that we have to adapt to. And so we're predicting there's just a tremendous amount of information out there. And there's 100 experts with 100 different opinions on what the forecast is. So I try and not do the crystal ball. What I do know is you have to be agile because you don't know what's coming at you. And that's where I think people, the agile people with the resources to deal with whatever that forecast may be are going to be the ones that do really, really well. We live in Florida. We can't forecast if there's going to be a hurricane or not, but you better be ready if it's coming.
For sure.
I do think it's going to be extremely interesting, but what year isn't for logistics?
That's great. You know what's interesting, guys? The answers that you gave me today, excuse me, are the reasons that I'm here. So I want to thank all of you for that.
Well, thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you. So that's our wrap for our first episode, and I'm so excited to be hosting Logistics Unplugged, and I look forward to our next episode next week, so please tune in for the market update with Bryce Williford, and we'll see you next time.